Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Abby Diamond. She is joining us live from Seattle, USA. She is an artist, she is a life experimenter, and strong believer in the art of imperfectionism. Welcome to the show, Abby.
Thank you so much, Ajay. It's wonderful to be with you. Wonderful to see you today.
You are welcome to the show. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure a lot of people, not just in India, not just in Washington, not just in the US, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about creativity, habits, and behavior change. We'll talk about being perfect by being imperfect. So first, to understand from you, Abby, you talk about so much about imperfectionism, strong believer in the art of. So I want you to help us understand first about how can you bring this world in a world which wants to be perfect. There is this whole debate going on. How do you manage to do this in your work life? Can you tell them you want to be imperfect? Will they allow it? I want to understand that.
I'm so happy that you asked me this question. This is one of my favorite topics. So I remember I first started thinking about this when I was at a Tony Robbins seminar. He said something that was like a slap in the face when I heard it. He said, perfectionism is actually the lowest standard because nothing gets done. So being a perfectionist is really just letting yourself off the hook for accomplishing the big things that you want to set out to do in your life, because you just stop yourself. You just stop yourself. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, that's what I've been doing. And so I heard him say that maybe 10 years ago, Ajay. And ever since, it has been settling into my system in all of these different ways, to the point where now I'm so passionate about cultivating the art of imperfectionism. And what does that actually look like? And how can we be kind to ourselves and be artistic in everything that we do, so that we can do things in a beautiful, creative, and sometimes messy way, and it's even better. So that's what comes up.
Right. So how do we do that? Or do we need to intentionally do it? Where are the things that we can be imperfect that will still be fine? Where are the things that we cannot take any chances? In my opinion, when I talk about these things, a surgeon cannot take a chance. They have to be perfect in while doing it. One who is building a bridge, you talk about design, I'm talking about the big designs. They have to be perfect so that the bridge does not fall off. So that thing. Likewise, there are hundreds of other things where you will need that perfectionism. But in our day-to-day life, we can certainly do with being human and not just working for perfection, because then the things will not be done. So help us understand, in your understanding about, because you are an artist, you also talk about, you help founders and artists design life they are proud of. So how do they design their life in the backdrop of being perfect or imperfect the way they want to do? What is the best way to do this?
Oh my God, these are such good questions. So first of all, I would say, of course, if it's a surgeon, if it's somebody who's doing something where lives are at stake, this is a whole different conversation, right? But when it comes to self-expression, I think that there's a lot that we can discover from taking a look at this concept. Because when we just listen to the inner dialogue inside, when we're doing something creative, what is that inner voice? What's it saying, and how critical is it being? Or how kind is it being? Are we talking to ourselves inside the way that we would want someone to talk to our own child, right? So that's what pops up in my head when I think about, like, when is the best time to even consider this? In my life, I'm an artist, I make music, and I do executive coaching. And I coach founders and C-suite executives on how to work more effectively with their teams, and how to really design lives that they're proud of, which what I noticed so much is like, how can we make these little shifts to their environments in order for them to really be more fulfilled with the way that their weeks are set up, right? And there can be so much perfection. I mean, there's perfectionism everywhere. If it's a leader, if it's an artist, if it's a gardener or a teacher, I think that we all struggle with this. But one thing that really helps me is one of my favorite behavior change scientists. His name is BJ Fogg. He used to have a behavior design lab at Stanford, and he has this awesome book. It's called Tiny Habits. It actually came out around the same time as Atomic Habits by James Clear, so it got heavily overshadowed by that book coming out. But Tiny Habits is the kind of a little known book that's just, it's Ajay, you have to read it. It's an amazing book. I think everybody should read this book. And he talks about behavior change. And he explains that there's a formula to it. So if you want to create a change in your life, he says behavior equals motivation plus ability plus prompt. So there are letters that go, it's B equals MAP. So BMAP, you can kind of remember that in your head. Behavior equals motivation plus ability plus prompt. So how can we think about that, right? If there's something in your life that you want to start doing regularly, let's say you want to start working out regularly, you want to start painting every day, you want to learn piano, you want to learn a new language, but you find that you're just not making the time for it. For whatever reason, it's not happening. It's not happening regularly. What's going on? So what he teaches is that you can basically look at this formula and you can figure out exactly what needs to be tweaked in your inner and outer environment in order to make this behavior happen. So let's take an example, Ajay. Is there something that you think your listeners would maybe resonate with as a habit that they'd want to take up? I'm so curious what you think about that.
Right. Everyone wants to be successful. And that definition of success is different with different people. But it is very important for everyone. They want their financial freedom and time freedom in today's time.
Okay, perfect example. So financial freedom, this could be something like making investments every time they get a paycheck or using their money in a diligent way. So some kind of habit that's associated with financial independence, building financial freedom and building wealth, right? So let's say that someone is, they want to invest every time they get a paycheck, but it just hasn't been happening. Okay. So behavior equals motivation plus ability plus prompt. So let's take a look. Motivation, the first one. Is there a problem with that? Well, probably not. I mean, of course they want to invest. So maybe it's not motivation. Ability. Is there something that's causing a little bit of friction about this process? Like maybe you don't have it set up automatically with your bank. So you have to go in, you have to log in, you keep forgetting your password, it's annoying to do it, right? So usually what I find when I'm coaching people on behavior change stuff is that the second one, ability, that's usually where we can look first and we can get so much juice just out of that one alone. Because if there's a little bit of friction, then you can slip on the habit. If the running shoes aren't close to the door, for example, right? Like if your gym clothes aren't close to the door, they're upstairs, you might decide that you don't want to go to the gym that day because it's just, I don't feel like going upstairs. So that's the ability one. That's A. And then P, prompt, right? So is there some kind of an anchor in your day that's reminding you now it's time to do this habit? Could be an alarm. It could be right after I get off of work, I'm going to do this. It could be right after a certain meeting every day, I'm going to do this. But look for those moments in your day. This is such a useful tip. Look for those anchors in your day that are already set in stone. They're already set in stone because then you can attach a new habit onto them, right? So I think that it's really easy to be a perfectionist and think, oh God, I'm not going to learn to paint unless I can be amazing at it right away. Or I'm not going to learn how to do this because it would take too long to learn or something like this, right? But if we just break it down and we go, okay, all right, the behavior, it equals motivation plus ability plus prompt. I'm not going to be a perfectionist about it. I'm just going to look at those three things and I'm going to say, all right, do I really want this? I do. Motivation's good. Is this easy to do? Is it easy enough to do that it's a given? I'm just going to do it. No problem. It's so easy. Okay. Then we have ability. Ability is good. And then lastly, is something reminding me to do it? And if those three things are in place, I think that we can build habits a lot more easily, and we can be imperfect about them. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Of course, of course. You are a master neuro-linguistic programming practitioner and clinical hypnotherapist, and you are obsessed with learning how people's brains work. So why is it, why is it that some people strive for perfection and some people uh, naturally strive for imperfection, and not in a negative way, but in a positive way? Nowadays, people have understood that, in terms of even online, people want authenticity. In terms of, music, you see, they talk about lo-fi music. Everywhere they are trying to inject a bit of imperfection so that people find it much more human. I want to understand, but for those people who are working towards being perfect, is it a habit? Is it a default in their programming or designing by the Almighty? How do they come out of that and and look at life much more kindly for themselves?
That's such a beautiful question, because I only have guesses, right? I think that a certain amount of it, absolutely just how we were each built. We were going to have this different makeup with how we speak to ourselves inside, but ultimately I think it has to do with how we speak to ourselves inside. Right?
Right.
If I have this inner sanctuary where the safest location in the world is inside of me, that's how I feel, then I'm going to be bold and courageous in my life, because I'm not coming home to a critic, right? I'm coming home to encouragement and support. But it's interesting how if somebody's rude out loud to someone else, they're going to get negative feedback about that, right? People around them, and they're going to see them be rude, and they're going to not want to hang out with that person. They'll lose friends. They won't be respected by their peers, but nobody hears the way we talk to ourselves inside. So it's, if you haven't been raised to learn how to be kind to yourself and to learn how to really choose the way that the inner talk happens, then it needs to be a disciplined thing at first, in my opinion, where you literally, you can write down kind things to say to yourself, and you can read them in your head. You can start with that. Every time you notice yourself saying something unkind, you can have a reminder, you can stop, and you can say something kind in your head. But I think that we need to train this. I think we need to have the discipline, the dedication to really build the way that inner communication happens with ourselves.
Right.
And when we start with that, so much is possible. But nobody can even see what's going on in there except for you. So you have to be the person leading that. You have to, or else it's not going to happen.
Right. Right. So help me understand. You talk about, the insane power of life experiments. And
Yeah.
in today's time, people talk about being focused on something that they want, being focused towards your goals. And you talk about experiments and build through that you get towards your biggest goals. How do you put these two things together in today's time? Who is right? How would you say, if you are talking about life experiments? I read about it in long back in that book called The Alchemist, where Santiago had to go
Beautiful.
out and
One of
then
my
see the
favorite.
light for himself, and then actually come back to the same position and find his pot of gold. Do you
Yeah.
mean that? I want to understand. The whole. So many things are so interrelated. I thought put them together to you so that you answer your own way. You answer at your own pace.
I love it. I love that question. That's one of my favorite books in the world. So, okay. My opinions have changed about this a lot over the years, and I'm very much still and always will be a student of this, of how to really design a life that's beautiful and magnificent, and how can I be practicing that in my own life. And I found life experiments probably about 8 years ago. And it was because my life really wasn't working. I was just not, I was living in LA. I was about, so I was in my early 20s. And I remember I went to a Tony Robbins seminar. This is actually how it got started. And I really faced the fact that the way that I was living my life wasn't aligned with the goals that I wanted to achieve. So if I wanted to achieve those goals, there was going to need to be a lot of changes to the way that my life looked every single day and what I was doing day in and day out. So I came back from that seminar and I was so inspired, Ajay. I was on a rampage. I started taking freezing cold showers every day and I was saying these affirmations out loud. I was doing these incantations and I was like, okay, I don't know exactly how to change my life, but I'm just going to start with the cold showers because that's really hard and I hate it. And so I'm just going to start there because I think that's going to be helpful. And it's so funny. I'm laughing because I just moved right next to the water in Seattle and I see people swimming in the ice cold water every day. And it's so inspiring to see that. Oh my God. But the other day I saw this guy and he was on this amazing new device. You know, these devices that just came out where it's like kind of like a hoverboard. It's incredible. It looks like they're skateboarding on the water. And so we zoomed in on a camera on this guy so we could see him really closely because he was quite far away. And we saw that he was smiling. He was smiling in the freezing cold water. And it was amazing to see that. But anyway, what I did at the time, Ajay, was I designed my first ever life experiment. So I remember I had someone in my life that was struggling with addiction, struggling with alcoholism and addiction. And I myself never struggled with substance abuse. Very empathetic to that journey. But that wasn't particularly my journey. But what I noticed for myself was, wow, even though I'm not addicted to substances, what am I addicted to that's causing me to not have the life that I want? And so I really just hit a breaking point with it where I moved to New York. I left LA. I moved to New York. I was like, I got to make a big change. It was the coldest New York winter ever. It was freezing. It was so cold. My skin was burning when I would go outside. And I took a piece of paper and I wrote down everything that I was addicted to. Everything that I was addicted to. And this included things like eating salt, eating sugar, eating too late at night, making excuses for being late, just making dumb excuses for being late to stuff. I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that it wasn't good for your neck and for your spine to sleep with a pillow. I wrote down pillows. I was really being exhausted with this list. I was like, what am I leaning on for comfort that could be a source of my life not really having the personal power that I'm committed to having? And so after I wrote this whole list out, right? All processed food, Netflix, internet, wasting my time on the internet, all these things. I said, okay, for 12 weeks, because I heard that you can form a new habit in 12 weeks. I kind of made all this up in my head with my first life experiment. But I said, for 12 weeks, which is 84 days, I'm going to cut out all of this stuff. I'm not going to do any of it. And so I picked my start day. I picked my end day. And it was terrifying. It was honestly one of the hardest experiences I've ever been through. It was because I was reaching for these things. Like just eating, it's so crazy, but just eating late at night, for example, was creating a numbness that was getting me to not look at some deep emotions that were there. And so I remember I set an alarm for 9 p.m. I said, okay, I'm not going to eat past 9 p.m. When the alarm went off that first day, I just left the apartment. I went on a long walk. And I started this process, and at first it was so weird. I felt like I was on another planet because all my comforts that I would lean towards, even just the little tiny, piddly, inconsequential things, I no longer had access to. And after about 2 weeks, my body, my nervous system, it was really strange, but something started to settle down inside of me. It started to feel like, okay, I'm not in survival mode anymore. I'm not in fight or flight. I'm actually surviving right now. And then a few more weeks went by. And then a few more weeks went by. And then these things started becoming normal. No processed food, no sugar, no salt, right? It was really interesting. I think I was doing a little bit of sea salt, but that was like the most processed it got. And wow, this completely changed my paradigm. So ever since then, I've done a handful of these 12-week kind of life overhauls where I will just say, wow, what would be a huge breakthrough for me? There was one period of time where I was really struggling with perfectionism. So I made and released a short film every day for 84 days. Man, I wouldn't probably repeat that one. It was not so great for my sleep, but it was amazing for my my inner artist. It was beautiful. So I'm doing one right now. What I'm doing right now is I'm actually following this beautiful book. It's called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Ajay, this is one of the best books in the entire world. You have to read it. It's absolutely beautiful. And this book, it outlines all these things that you can do for 12 weeks to really nurture your creativity. And these are things like every morning, you just journal 3 full pages. It's called your morning pages. First thing you do, you take yourself on a weekly artist date. So you take yourself on a date every week, just by yourself, where it's you and your creativity. Maybe you go to a restaurant by yourself and you do watercolors. Maybe you just go for a walk and you listen to your favorite album from when you were in high school. But you do something that's really just nurturing your relationship with your creative artist inside. And then you answer all these journaling prompts, and she has you do these crazy things like invent 5 different lives you could be living if it weren't this one. So you do these crazy prompts, you read this beautiful book, and it's a 12-week long process, and it's been absolutely amazing. So I'm on the 2nd week of it right now.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious.
So, yeah.
I was just want to say, I'm so curious, Ajay. Have you ever experienced anything like that before? Have you ever said, okay, you know what, I'm going to try cutting out XYZ for a certain length of time, or I'm really going to like push myself to do a life experiment? Have you had anything like that?
I don't remember anything in particular, but I would say a lot of people in India, they have been brought up in a way that, and there is this joint family system for many of us, that you are always around people. So my childhood, I had always a lot of people around me, either in terms of family, extended family, or friends. So you don't get those habits that you need to relook at. But only thing I think in my case is that to get to a bit more in terms of focused approach. And that was one thing I think I had to work a bit. Rest, I am focused, but the problem is that when you are good in 2-3 things at the same time, then sometimes it becomes difficult to focus on one thing. Nowadays, you see, there are people who talk about being multi-hyphenate. Earlier, I did not know about this word, or I could have taken refuge under that. So you get my point. So
yeah.
Now I know about how do you describe. See, for me, I'm a content entrepreneur. I'm a podcast host. I have the journalism background. I'm an independent journalist also. I do several things at the same time. So I found this word now. I can use it. Earlier, how many things? Otherwise, people will think this guy is not serious. Even in resume, you write 5-7 things, and people will think this guy is not focused. Even your resume has to be, just focused on the job that you are applying. So those are the things you want to calibrate those things, and sometimes you just wonder what is the best way I put my case for whatever I am doing in front of people who may have their own limitations of understanding you, your talent, your way of looking life, And perhaps that is the reason a lot of workplaces are very difficult nowadays. A lot of people, that is why, have gone towards the great resignation and want to lead their life. Even you are a digital nomad, if I understand in one sense or the other. So
Yeah.
I want you to understand, as part of this extended answer is that, do you think now the new generation is trying to live life much more with experiments than the earlier generation? Or was it that the earlier generation used to live with experiments because the technology, the science was at that level itself, that you did not need to experiment anything extra? And nowadays, for example, a lot of young people would like to go to a farm because they have not seen a farm in that manner. For
Yeah.
us, farm was a natural thing. You wanted to go to a city and see things for yourself. I want to understand, how do you look at it from a two-generation perspective? How do you make the right sort of experiments and not the wrong sort of experiments?
Oh my God. And that makes me want to go to a farm so badly. By the way, that sounds beautiful. So this is very interesting because I coach founders and people who are all different ages, right? And I would say, if I'm making a generalization, I don't know if it's necessarily that the younger people want to do these immersive experiments more than older people necessarily. I think it more depends, like, what life stage are they in? And also, are they neurodiverse? I have ADHD, and anytime I'm working with a client who has ADHD, or they're on the spectrum, they're on the autism spectrum, they always want to try a life experiment. Like, they're like, oh yeah, that's perfect. They resonate with it immediately, which is very interesting. But I would say, more having to do with what their capacity looks like in terms of bandwidth rather than how old they are. For example, if they have a family that with young children, they may be like, I'm maxed out right now. I want to make small incremental changes and do little habits instead of some big overhaul. I think you bring this up is a really, really good point, because what you're pointing to so astutely is that life experiments is not, it can't be the end of it. It's not the answer. It's useful. For me, I found it to be extremely useful. But if that's what you're relying on to become a better person, then the pendulum's going to be swinging back and forth a lot in your life, right? You're going to go on I'm going to do a juice fast. And then now I'm going to go on, become a runner, and I'm going to run a marathon. And then you're between those periods of time where you're pushing yourself, you probably exhaust yourself and you maybe go up and down a little bit. So what's more effective? Taking this BJ Fogg, more measured, methodical approach where you make little small shifts to your environment and you build habits slowly in little pieces, or doing these big, massive overhauls? Well, I would say the first. That's more effective. I found that to be more effective for myself and for others. With that said, having a combination of that plus these periods of time where I just really push myself to up level in certain ways, that combination has been beautiful for me, because it gets me to expand what I believe I'm capable of and just kind of flip my life over. So I think it has to be both.
Right. My last question to you, is to understand, you talk about habits. And some people, they create several bad habits. How do I create one good habit of removing all the bad habits? Tell me about it.
Wow. Okay. So how do I create one good habit to dismantle all the bad habits? That's amazing. Okay. So here's the first thing. All right. Get out a piece of paper and write down what all the bad habits are. Okay. Maybe take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and just say, all right, here's what's working and here's what's not working. Or you say good habits, bad habits, and just see what comes up. See what you write down on that piece of paper. And then when you're looking at the bad habits or the things that you want to change, you got to ground yourself in the behavior change formula. Behavior equals motivation plus ability plus prompt. It's the same with bad habits. So if you're doing that, why are you doing it? Is it because, well, it's like you're eating a lot of donuts or something and you really want to eat them because they taste amazing, so motivation is like totally messing you up? Is it because you're getting prompted? For example, maybe your partner, it keeps baking cookies for you and offering them to you. So it's like, oh my God, the prompt is there. So you can utilize this formula and it can really, really help you to understand the nature of the bad habit. And then what you do is you go, okay, if, for example, so B equals MAP, you have to make it harder. So for ability, it's so easy to, let's say you're watching Netflix too much. So it's so easy. The TV's right there. You can just flip it right on, right? So can you try something where you keep the TV unplugged, right? You sign out of Netflix on your computer. So every time you need to watch it, you need to actually re-sign in. Can you add a little bit of friction into the equation? And what you'll often notice is just adding a little bit of friction is all you need. It really does the trick. So just setting, for example, either timers on your phone, or there's apps that you can set up on your phone where it'll just log you out of your social media accounts, or your phone will just lock at a certain point of time in the night. And that will just get people, it'll break it'll disrupt the behavior. So it's a prompt and it makes it a little bit harder. It takes care of ability and prompt, right? So how can we use that formula? And how can we get it to help us build good habits, and then help us to dismantle bad habits by making them a little bit more challenging, less satisfying, and prompting us to make a different decision. So the first thing I'd say is read the book Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. Read that book. But then also, when you're on the right track, you have to celebrate it. When you do the right thing, you have to take a moment. And it ties back beautifully to what we were talking about in the beginning of our conversation, Ajay. You have to take a moment and you have to say something nice to yourself inside. Maybe you put your hand on your heart and you're like, nice, thank you. That was a really good choice. Or you just like, I don't know, you smile to yourself. Something authentic where maybe you just say, thank you. Thank you. I'm setting my future self up right now. Like, I'm being a good friend to myself. Something like that, because then you're creating a little bit of a dopamine response there. And now you're going to rewire your brain to start associating dopamine with doing the right habit, with doing the right behavior. Okay. And similarly, when you do the wrong behavior, have a little moment where you go like, that wasn't it. Right. So you're starting to rewire your circuitry around these things, and you start wanting to do the workout and not wanting to turn on Netflix. This has been extremely helpful for me, and I've experimented with a lot of stuff around this, including like paying myself to do positive habits. There's so many ways that you can experiment with this, but it's quite fun. And I would say the first thing to start with is celebrating when you do the right thing inside, and use that as a practice to build your inner positive self-talk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is much to learn about creativity, habits, and behavior change. And this is one episode that I say, you can talk about so many great things. So, how do people connect with you to learn more about you, more from you, and also to engage professionally with you?
Amazing. So Instagram is the best place to connect with me. My handle is Abby Diamond X. So ABBYDIAMOND and then X. You can listen to my music on any platform. Just type in Abby Diamond into Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, etc. And what I'm doing right now, which is going to be beautiful, is I'm developing an online course for the artist's way. So if you want to do a life experiment around your creativity, what you can do is I'm doing 100% of proceeds to rescue children from human trafficking. So I'm going to partner with this nonprofit called Operation Underground Railroad. They're incredible. They set up these rescue missions for children that are being trafficked. If you go to their website, which is OURrescue.org, so ourrescue.org, OURrescue.org. So it stands for Operation Underground Railroad. So ourrescue.org. and just make a donation, whatever you want. You can decide how much you donate. Then DM me a screenshot of your donation to my Instagram. And when the online course is ready, I'll share it with you. So let's do life experiments together. Be kind to your inner artist. Talk in a really beautiful way to yourself. Talk to yourself inside the way that you would want someone to talk to your own child. And celebrate when you do the right thing.
Wonderful, wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thanks so much. Wonderful being with you.